When FBI agents raided Leonardo DiCaprio's Beverly Hills mansion on June 3, 2003, they weren't investigating an actor. They were pursuing what appeared to be one of the most sophisticated con artists in American history. Leo's method acting for Catch Me If You Can had evolved into actual fraud, mentored by the real Frank Abagnale Jr., culminating in an elaborate scheme to defraud Steven Spielberg and DreamWorks of $15 million. The line between playing a con man and being one had completely disappeared. Before we dive into this incredible true crime story of Hollywood deception, don't forget to comment where you're listening to this from. Now, let's get into the story. January 14, 2002. Montreal, Canada. Leonardo DiCaprio sat across from Frank Abagnale Jr. in a private meeting room at the Four Seasons Hotel. But this wasn't a typical actor-consultant session. For the past 3 hours, Abagnale had been teaching Leo not just how to portray a con artist, but how to actually execute sophisticated financial fraud. Acting like a con man and being a con man are two different skills, Abagnale told Leo, according to recordings later obtained by federal investigators. If you want your performance to be authentic, you need to understand how the real thing works. And the real thing works by making people believe something that isn't true. What started as character research had quickly evolved into something far more dangerous. Leo, fascinated by Abagnale's stories of impersonating doctors, lawyers, and airline pilots while stealing millions of dollars, began asking increasingly specific questions about modern fraud techniques. Abagnale, who had been working as an FBI consultant for decades, initially tried to keep their discussions theoretical. But Leo's intensity and his apparent genuine interest in the psychology of deception gradually broke down Abagnale's professional boundaries. Leo wasn't just learning to act like Frank Abagnale, Steven Spielberg later testified during congressional hearings about the incident. He was learning to think like Frank Abagnale. Frank was teaching him the actual mechanics of fraud, how to forge documents, how to manipulate bank systems, how to create false identities. I thought it was just incredibly dedicated method acting, but Leo was building a criminal skill set. The first sign of trouble came when Leo began using techniques he'd learned from Abagnale during everyday interactions. Production assistants noticed that Leo had started obtaining free meals, hotel upgrades, and luxury services by impersonating various professionals, sometimes claiming to be a film critic, sometimes a studio executive, sometimes a wealthy investor scouting locations. Initially, crew members thought Leo was just staying in character between takes, but the sophistication of his deceptions suggested something more systematic. Tom Hanks, who was playing FBI agent Carl Hanratty in the film, became concerned when Leo began approaching him with what appeared to be investment opportunities that seemed too good to be true. Leo started pitching me these elaborate business deals, Hanks later recalled. He had official-looking documents, references from people I'd supposedly heard of, detailed financial projections. When I mentioned it to my business manager, he told me the whole thing looked like a sophisticated con job. That's when I realized Leo wasn't just playing Frank Abagnale, he was becoming him. The situation escalated when Leo began creating false identities, complete with fake credentials, bank accounts, and business entities. Using techniques that Abagnale had taught him for research purposes, Leo established himself as Leonardo Castellano, a wealthy Italian film investor, and began approaching other celebrities and industry figures with fraudulent investment schemes. The identities were so convincing that several A-list actors, believing they were dealing with a legitimate international investor, provided Leo with sensitive financial information. Frank Abagnale later claimed that he had intended their sessions to remain educational, but FBI transcripts of their recorded conversations revealed that he had provided Leo with specific instructions on document forgery, identity theft, and financial manipulation. You want to understand Frank Abagnale's mindset? Abagnale could be heard saying on the tapes, "Then you need to understand that everything is a performance, and every performance can be profitable if you know how to work the system." The transformation of Leonardo DiCaprio from method actor to actual con artist accelerated during the summer of 2002 when he began targeting Steven Spielberg himself with an elaborate investment fraud scheme. Using his identity as Leonardo Castellano, the fictional Italian investor, Leo approached Spielberg's representatives with a proposal to finance a $50 million historical epic about the real Frank Abagnale's later life as an FBI consultant. The project, which Leo claimed was being developed by a consortium of European investors, was entirely fictional but presented with such sophistication that Spielberg's team spent months evaluating it. The scheme was multi-layered and demonstrated Leo's complete absorption of Abagnale's criminal techniques. Leo had created an entire fictional production company, complete with offices in Rome and London, actually just mail forwarding services, fake film industry credentials, and detailed financial backing from non-existent European banks. He had even hired actors to portray executives from his fictional company during video conferences with Spielberg's team, directing their performances to maintain the elaborate deception. Leo's con was so sophisticated that it fooled our entire legal and financial team for 8 months, DreamWorks executive Jeffrey Katzenberg later testified. He had created a complete alternate reality where he was this mysterious Italian financier with unlimited resources and a passion for historical films. Every document checked out, every reference confirmed his story, every meeting reinforced his credibility. It was the most elaborate fraud I'd ever encountered, and it was being perpetrated by one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The psychological aspect of Leo's deception was perhaps the most disturbing element. He had begun living as Leonardo Castellano even when not actively pursuing the fraud, maintaining apartments in New York and London under his false identity, developing relationships with people who knew him only as the Italian investor, and apparently becoming convinced that his fictional persona was more interesting and powerful than his real identity as an actor. Dr. Patricia Chen, a forensic psychologist who later evaluated Leo, found evidence that he was experiencing what she termed identity displacement disorder, a condition where an individual becomes so absorbed in a false identity that they begin to prefer that identity to their real self. Mr. DiCaprio appeared to genuinely enjoy being Leonardo Castellano more than being Leonardo DiCaprio, Dr. Chen reported. The con artist identity gave him a sense of power and control that his acting career couldn't provide. The fraud began to unravel when Spielberg's financial advisors attempted to verify the European banking connections that were supposedly funding Leo's fictional film project. When investigators tried to trace the money back to its source, they discovered a complex web of shell companies, false identities, and fraudulent documents that all led back to Leonardo DiCaprio. The sophistication of the scheme suggested either the work of an experienced criminal organization or someone who had received expert training in financial fraud. The FBI investigation, led by Agent Sarah Rodriguez, initially focused on the possibility that Leo was being manipulated by actual criminals who were using his celebrity status to legitimize their fraud schemes. We couldn't believe that a successful actor would risk his entire career to steal money he didn't need, Agent Rodriguez later explained. Our initial theory was that Mr. DiCaprio was a victim, not a perpetrator. It took months of investigation to realize that he was the mastermind of the entire operation. The federal investigation into Leonardo DiCaprio's fraudulent activities revealed the full extent to which his relationship with Frank Abagnale had corrupted his judgment and transformed him from an actor researching a role into an actual criminal. Wiretapped conversations between Leo and Abagnale showed that their mentor-student relationship had evolved into active criminal conspiracy, with Abagnale providing ongoing advice and encouragement for Leo's increasingly sophisticated fraud schemes. Frank told me that the greatest con artists in history were also the greatest performers, Leo could be heard saying on FBI recordings. He said that if I could make people believe I was someone else on screen, I could make them believe anything in real life. He was teaching me to see the whole world as a stage where everyone was a potential mark, including Steven and the studio executives I worked with every day. The psychological evaluation conducted by federal authorities revealed that Leo had developed what Dr. Michael Santos described as criminal narcissism, a condition where the individual derives pleasure and self-worth from successfully deceiving others. Leo's journals, seized during the FBI raid, contained detailed accounts of his various cons and expressions of contempt for the people he had deceived. These people are so eager to believe in what they want to see, Leo had written. Steven thinks he's getting access to European film money, but he's just another mark who can't see past his own greed. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Leo had been defrauding other celebrities and industry figures beyond the Spielberg scheme. Using various false identities, he had convinced several A-list actors to invest in non-existent projects, had obtained luxury goods and services through fraudulent means, and had even attempted to manipulate award show voting by impersonating Academy members and film critics. The total amount of his fraudulent activities exceeded $8 million, not including the potential $15 million Spielberg fraud that was prevented by the investigation. Frank Abagnale's role in Leo's criminal activity became a major focus of the federal investigation. As a consultant to the FBI, Abagnale held a position of trust that he had apparently violated by actively encouraging and assisting Leo's fraudulent schemes. Recorded conversations showed Abagnale not only providing technical advice about fraud techniques, but also expressing admiration for Leo's criminal creativity and suggesting new targets for his schemes. Frank had become emotionally invested in Leo's success as a con artist. FBI behavioral analyst Jennifer Walsh reported. He seemed to view Leo as his protégé, someone who could carry on his criminal legacy in a more sophisticated way. Instead of discouraging Leo's illegal activities, Frank was actively promoting them, apparently living vicariously through Leo's crimes. The most disturbing aspect of the investigation was the discovery that Leo had been planning what he called the ultimate con, a scheme to fake his own death during the filming of a dangerous stunt, collect life insurance payouts, and disappear with a new identity that Frank Abagnale was helping him create. The plan, detailed in encrypted files found on Leo's computer, involved staging an accident that would make his death appear accidental while allowing him to escape with millions of dollars and start a new life as one of his fictional identities. The arrest of Leonardo DiCaprio on federal fraud charges sent shockwaves through Hollywood and revealed the extent to which one of the industry's biggest stars had been living a double life as a sophisticated con artist. The FBI raid on his Beverly Hills mansion uncovered what Agent Rodriguez described as a criminal enterprise worthy of a master con artist. Rooms filled with forged documents, false identification papers, banking records for dozens of fraudulent accounts, and detailed files on potential victims throughout the entertainment industry. The evidence seized during the raid painted a picture of an actor who had become completely absorbed in criminal activity. Leo had maintained detailed records of his various cons, including psychological profiles of his victims, strategies for manipulation, and assessments of which celebrities and executives would be most vulnerable to his deceptions. DiCaprio had turned fraud into a systematic business, prosecutor Janet Chen explained to the grand jury. He wasn't just stealing money, he was studying human psychology and using his acting skills to exploit people's trust and greed. The impact on Steven Spielberg was both financial and personal. While the director ultimately lost no money due to the FBI's intervention, the psychological trauma of discovering that one of his lead actors had been actively trying to defraud him during filming created lasting trust issues. "I keep wondering what else Leo was lying about," Spielberg said in a sealed deposition. "Every scene we filmed together, every conversation we had about the character, I now realize he might have been manipulating me the entire time, studying me as a potential victim while I thought we were collaborating as artists." The legal proceedings revealed the sophisticated nature of Leo's criminal operation. Federal prosecutors argued that Leo had used his celebrity status and acting skills to create what they termed performance-based fraud, criminal schemes that were essentially elaborate acting performances designed to steal money rather than entertain audiences. The prosecution contended that Leo's actions represented a new category of white-collar crime that combined traditional fraud techniques with advanced psychological manipulation. Tom Hanks, who had worked closely with Leo during filming, expressed shock at the revelation of his co-star's criminal activities. Looking back, there were signs, Hanks later admitted. Leo seemed to know too much about actual fraud techniques, and he was always testing boundaries, always seeing how far he could push people. But I never imagined he was using our film as cover for actual criminal activity. It makes me question everything about method acting and how far actors should go to research their roles. The most damning evidence came from Leo's own recorded conversations, where he could be heard expressing genuine enjoyment of his criminal activities and contempt for his victims. Acting is just pretending to be someone else for a few hours, Leo said in one recording. But being a con artist means you're always performing, always in control, always smarter than everyone around you. It's the ultimate acting challenge, and the stakes make it more exciting than any movie could ever be. Frank Abagnale faced federal charges for his role in encouraging and assisting Leo's criminal activities, violating the terms of his agreement with the FBI and potentially facing prison time for the first time in decades. His fall from respected consultant to criminal co-conspirator represented one of the most dramatic reversals in the history of federal law enforcement cooperation. The plea agreement that resolved Leonardo DiCaprio's federal fraud case included terms that effectively ended his acting career while allowing him to avoid prison time. In exchange for cooperation with ongoing investigations into celebrity fraud schemes and payment of $12 million in restitution, Leo agreed to forfeit his right to work in the entertainment industry for 10 years and submit to ongoing psychological treatment for what federal authorities classified as criminal personality disorder. The completion and release of Catch Me If You Can became a surreal experience for everyone involved in the production. Audiences praised Leo's authentic portrayal of Frank Abagnale, unaware that they were watching an actor who had genuinely become the character he was playing. Critics noted the remarkable accuracy of Leo's performance, not realizing that his authenticity came from actual criminal experience rather than acting technique. Steven Spielberg's decision to proceed with the film's release, despite the scandal, was controversial but ultimately vindicated by the movie's success. The film serves as an unintentional documentary, Spielberg later explained. Audiences are watching the real-time transformation of an actor into a criminal. Leo's performance is so authentic because he wasn't acting anymore. He was being himself, and himself had become a con artist. The psychological aftermath for Leo was complex and ongoing. Dr. Santos, who supervised his court-mandated therapy, found that Leo struggled with what he termed identity addiction, a condition where the individual becomes dependent on assuming false identities, because their real self feels inadequate by comparison. Mr. DiCaprio had discovered that being Leonardo Castellano, the mysterious Italian investor, gave him a sense of power and excitement that being Leonardo DiCaprio, the famous actor, couldn't match, Dr. Santos reported. Frank Abagnale served 2 years in federal prison for his role in Leo's criminal activities, his first incarceration since the 1960s. Upon his release, he expressed remorse for his influence on Leo's criminal development. "I created a monster," Abagnale said in his only interview about the case. "I taught a gifted actor how to use his talents for crime, and I nearly destroyed his life and career in the process. Leo's tragedy is that he was too good at learning what I taught him." The case led to significant changes in how the entertainment industry approaches method acting and character research. Studios now require psychological evaluation and legal oversight when actors are working with real-life criminals or researching illegal activities. The DiCaprio protocols mandate that all interactions between actors and criminal consultants be recorded and reviewed by legal and medical professionals. Leonardo DiCaprio's attempted return to acting after his 10-year ban faced significant obstacles, as studios remained wary of an actor with a federal fraud conviction. His later focus on environmental activism and documentary filmmaking was seen by industry insiders as an attempt to rebuild his public image and demonstrate genuine commitment to legitimate causes rather than criminal enterprises. The irony of the case was not lost on federal investigators. An actor famous for his environmental activism and charitable work had nearly destroyed his career by becoming the very type of criminal he was supposed to be portraying. Mr. DiCaprio's case demonstrates that method acting can become a form of criminal behavior when taken to dangerous extremes, Agent Rodriguez concluded in her final report. The pursuit of authentic performance led to authentic crime, and only federal intervention prevented it from becoming authentic tragedy. Today, Catch Me If You Can is studied in both film schools and criminal justice programs as an example of how the lines between performance and reality can disappear with dangerous consequences. Leo's portrayal remains one of the most authentic con artist performances in cinema history, but that authenticity came at the cost of nearly destroying the performer's life and career. The student had surpassed his teacher, and both had paid the price for forgetting that some roles are too dangerous to truly inhabit. This is the incredible true story of how Leonardo DiCaprio's method acting for Catch Me If You Can led to actual fraud, FBI investigation, and the near destruction of his career through real criminal activity. Thank you for listening to this shocking tale of performance becoming reality in the most dangerous way possible. Don't forget to rate our story out of 10 in the comments and tell us which other Leonardo DiCaprio criminal story you'd like us to investigate next. Until next time, remember that some characters are too dangerous to become, and some methods of acting cross the line from performance into actual crime.